I have a question here from someone regarding Jehovah's organization. Uh, by the way, if you're new to this YouTube channel, uh, I've been online on my website, on the Watchman's Post, since 2002. And one of the features on the Watchman's Post is the mailbag, in which I entertain questions from readers, mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, and some interested persons and people that are studying with Jehovah's Witnesses that may have doctrinal questions or issues revolving around the Watchtower. I also entertain questions on a monthly program, a podcast. But anyway, I thought I would entertain a question here for a new audience on YouTube. And if you have questions, you can contact me from my website or here on the YouTube channel. I'm going to try to do more regular YouTube broadcast. Anyway, here's his comment. It's about a paragraph in length. So, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He says, I'm not disfellowshipped, nor have I disassociated myself. I still go to meetings on occasion, but I'm what is considered inactive. My interest is that you still hold true to the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, but yet not everything. Although I was raised as a Catholic, I never believed that Jesus was God or hellfire or the immortality of the soul or idolizing the saints. As a result of this, it was very easy for me to accept and become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I too believe the basic doctrines, which, by the way, were believed and taught since the time of C.T. Russell. My problem is that I am stumbled over the attention that is given to what is revered as God's organization. Instead of trying to strengthen our faith to look to God's kingdom, they want us to look to Jehovah's organization. And so, this prelude was just to help you better understand my question. And the question is, how much involvement does Jehovah actually have with Jehovah's organization? Oh. Well, you know that the reason I considered this question for YouTube is because obviously that is a question or speaks to a broader issue that is affecting a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. I suspect that there are probably more ex-Jehovah's Witnesses now than there are active Jehovah's Witnesses. There has been a regular, steady exodus from the Watchtower for various reasons, which I won't go into. But certainly this is one aspect of it, that the organization is all imposing upon really the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses. And with some justification, the common accusation is that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, although I don't accept that in the terms that most people use it. It does bear certain characteristics of a cult. Be that as it may, the questioner asked, to what extent has Jehovah been involved, if at all? But think about that question. Would God only partially be involved? Would he dabble in this or that? I would say first that there is a lot more to the truth than simply that God is not a Trinity, or God does not burn people forever, or that humans do not have an immortal soul. I mean, that's just the basic ABC, things that God is not, or the true, things that are not true. And admittedly, that's a big part of the ministry of Jehovah's Witnesses, is tearing down all of these falsehoods. But there is such a thing as the truth. Once we strip away all the falsehoods, what is the truth? And I think something that will help persons like that ask this question and others of Jehovah's Witnesses and interested persons is that God has a purpose. And that's something that I don't think most religious people, most Christians really appreciate. In the minds of the average churchgoer, God just has set this thing in motion. You know, people die and they go to heaven, they go to hell, and it just goes on and on and on. But we appreciate that Jehovah has a purpose. And it really began with the man Abraham. That's when he established himself with an individual person, made a covenant with Abraham for the Messiah. And that really begins the story, doesn't it? And then, of course, the sons of Abraham, the Israelites, Jehovah made a covenant with them through Moses, and he kept progressing in the accomplishment of his purpose. And, of course, all the while, there's this enemy, Satan the devil, who was trying to oppose Jehovah's purpose. That's what the word Satan means, the adversary, the opposer. And when we read the history of Israel and Judah, we see constantly that Satan was overreaching. He would bring in marauding bands and armies to try to destroy the nation. But he was most successful in corrupting it from within. Most of the kings of Israel and Judah were corrupt. They were evil. They were idolatrous. Set up golden calves and phallic symbols, and the priests got the people worshiping all of these things. So take the question from the emailer. To what extent was Jehovah involved with Israel and Judah? Well, he was very much involved, wasn't he? And he allowed things to go on, but at times then he intervened directly to set things back on course in order to accomplish his purpose, which in the case of Israel and Judah, ultimately it was that they would produce and receive the Messiah. So Jehovah had to take strong measures at times. He had Israel completely destroyed, and ultimately Jerusalem itself was destroyed. And the Jews were dragged off to Babylon. But how would God accomplish his purpose with the nation that was to receive the Messiah didn't exist? And so Jehovah intervened in a big way, caused Babylon to be overthrown in one night through Cyrus, brought the Jews back. They never did set up idolatry again, so he fixed that, didn't he? And then the Messiah came. And of course, most of the Jews rejected him, but some didn't. And they began a new phase. They were welcomed into a new phase of Jehovah's purpose, which is ultimately to set up a new heavens and a new earth. Now again, the average churchgoer has no idea what that means. They think God is going to reconstruct the universe and destroy this earth and create another planet and all. Actually, when God brought the Jews back from Babylon, and Isaiah twice uses that expression in Isaiah 65 and 66, a new heavens and a new earth. And that can help us to appreciate what that means in the broader sense. Because as I said, when the Jews came back, they didn't set up another system of idolatry. It was a new society of worshipers of God in a very limited way. But of course, The Apostle Peter used that expression, and it's found in the book of Revelation as well. And ultimately, it means that God is going to set up a new government and replace the present government, which is Satan the devil. He's in the heavens, right? Satan and his demons are the rulers of this world. That's one of the basic teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses. The churches have really confused people with, the devil is in some subterranean inferno and all this kind of nonsense. But those first Christians who accepted the Messiah were anointed, and they're going to be part of the new heavens, a new government, the kingdom of God. And the new earth is a new earthly society of people who will live on this earth after Jehovah destroys this present world. So, the apostles were pretty straightforward, and they explained to us that Satan would be allowed to corrupt Christianity just as he had done with Israel. But ultimately, Jehovah's purpose will be accomplished. And that's where Jehovah's Witnesses come in. C.T. Russell, that questioner, commented on that. With C.T. Russell, that's when Jehovah began to pour out his spirit. There was another grouping of anointed persons that appeared on the scene under the authority of the Watchtower. And then, of course, by 1935, Rutherford identified the great multitude, the so-called great crowd, who are going to come out of the Great Tribulation. And no, they're not in heaven. People will take you to Revelation 19 as if there were not two great crowds. There is a great crowd of angels and also a great crowd of people who will survive the coming Great Tribulation, and they will make up the new earth. And this is what Jehovah's Witnesses have always understood. So it would make sense that this is Jehovah's will, that people understand his purpose. But now the point about the idolatry. It is true that there is an inordinate focus on the organization. And from Jehovah's standpoint, anything that takes away from his glory is idolatry. And the organization has done that. It claims to, be the mouthpiece, the infallible mouthpiece, even though they don't use that expression of infallibility, they certainly act that way. The leadership acts as if they were infallible. And anyway, it's interesting. I just want to answer this question by taking you to a chapter in Isaiah. And I've done a series on Isaiah. If you go to my website, on the drop-down menu, page 1, it drops down, there's Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, where I've written commentaries on those prophetic books. And I've sort of left off on Isaiah because when you get to the 37th, 38th, 39th chapter, it goes into the actual history, the invasion of Jerusalem and what happened there. But then in the 40th chapter, it begins Jehovah's dialogue, and it carries through to the end of Isaiah. And it's Jehovah speaking to Israel. Only it's not the Israelites, it is the anointed Christian congregation, which the Apostle Paul said was the Israel of God. It replaced the physical, fleshly nation of Israel. And Paul, to the Galatians, he said, if you belong to Christ, you are really the seed of Abraham. And explained to the Romans, he as a Jew is not one on the outside through circumcision, but one on the inside. Those are the real Jews, the anointed. So anyway, Jehovah begins speaking to this anointed congregation, which will be on the earth when? When Christ returns. And Christ will come as a refiner and a cleanser of his people. And we would have to suspect that idolatry would be one of the things that they would be cleansed of. Now, in Isaiah, the 48th chapter, let me open up my Bible here. Let's pick it up. Starts off in verse 1 of chapter 48. Those who swear by the name of Jehovah. That fits Jehovah's Witnesses, does it not? He says, in verse 3, it says, the former things I told you long ago. From my own mouth they went out, and I have made them known. So that's what we have in the scriptures. And suddenly I took action, and they came in. He's talking about the fulfillment of his judgments in connection with the coming of Christ. Now, verse 4, he says, because I knew how stubborn you are, that your neck is an iron sinew, and your forehead is copper. I told you long ago, before it came about. I caused you to hear it, so that you could not say, my idol did this. My carved image and my metal image commanded this. So here it is. Jehovah is stating that it is his purpose to discredit the idol that his people look to. That idol is the Watchtower Society. So how will Jehovah discredit it? Well, it goes on to say, you have heard and seen all of this. Will you not declare it? From now on, I am announcing new things to you, guarded secrets that you have not known. Only now are they being created, and not long ago, things that you never heard before today, so that you cannot say, look, I already know them. No, you have not heard, you have not known, and in the past your ears were not opened, for I know that you are very treacherous, and you have been called a transgressor from birth. But, this is the good news, right? For the sake of my name, I will hold back my anger. For my own praise, I will restrain myself toward you, and I will not do away with you. So when is now, today, when God brings in these new things that his people have not heard of before, so that they cannot attribute it to their mouthpiece? It is the authentic coming of Christ, the Parasya. And that's something that Jehovah's Witnesses have not heard of, because the Parasya is old news. The invisible presence of Christ began in 1914. We've got all the evidence right here, the chronology, the 2,520 years. It ends right at, and we knew that. We knew that back in 1878. The first issues of the Watchtower started pointing forward to 1914. Our idol has spoken all of these things, and we understood all of these things from the beginning. Jehovah's organization is the infallible mouthpiece of God. Whatever it says is the truth, unless they revise it somewhat. But it's... Do you get the point? Jehovah has concealed things from them that they may not see through it. And this is not really a new phenomenon. If you recall, the apostles, Jesus' own apostles, who he taught and was with, and they saw all these miracles and so forth, and he explained to them very simply, in the 9th chapter of Luke, I believe, He said he pulled him aside and said, look, the Son of Man, he's going to Jerusalem. He's going to be handed over and put to death. And the apostles are like, what are you talking about? What are you, and Peter, pulled him aside. Lord, 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 be kind to yourself. You will not have this destiny at all. And what did Jesus say? Get behind me, Satan, because you think men's thoughts. But there in the 9th chapter of Luke, it says that this was concealed from them, that they might not see through it. Who concealed it from them? Jehovah opened up their minds to accept Jesus as the Son of God, but yet he concealed from them something that we take for an obvious statement of fact, that Jesus died. They couldn't accept it. That didn't make any sense to them. They thought the Messiah, of course, was going to be put on the throne there in Jerusalem, his dying and going back to heaven. They couldn't understand it at that point. But why did Jehovah conceal it from them? So that their faith could be tested. Isn't that what Jesus told Peter on the night of his arrest? He said, look, Satan has demanded to have you men to sift you as wheat. But I made supplication that your faith does not give out. And so that can help us to understand why Jehovah has concealed this. It's to discredit the idol and force those who call upon the name of God, who swear by the name of Jehovah, to go the rest of the distance by faith and not following the utterances of their idol. And so that's why in the near future, with the coming of Christ, the watchtower will not be a factor. And I've written a fair bit about this in the book, The Little Crown there. Jehovah himself has become king. There's a chapter called Collapse of the Watchtower. And in it I explain why it is God's purpose to bring his people to a certain point in this organization and then have the organization come to an end, sort of leave everybody hanging there in the wilderness in order to allow them to demonstrate their faith, to go that last distance in order to qualify to be part of the new heavens and the new earth. So I hope that answers your question. As I say, if you have other questions, I would like to do this on YouTube more frequently, but you can always email me as well. Thank you for watching.